Well, thank you, Kaden Huff, for coming on. And for people that don't know you, you were adopted from another country, and your mom was diagnosed with cancer.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you were admitted to the hospital, kicked out by your parents. You were homeless at some point. And now you are a Christian. You graduated from community college, and you're attending Baylor University. And you're a Team Waco sponsored athlete competing in Ironman races.
Yep.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how this all happened.
Okay, awesome. So I guess I'll just everything you said is correct. I'm just gonna fill in the blanks.
Supplement some of that information for me.
So I am adopted from Ethiopia. I was adopted with 3 sisters. I have 2 older sisters and 1 younger sister who were adopted with me and are now in the States. I have 1 other sister who wasn't adopted. She was like a newborn at the time, so she's still in Ethiopia. So I was adopted by my American parents.
When you were how old?
About 8 years old.
About 8 years old.
I was 8 years old when I was adopted, and that was in 2008. So it's been about 16, a little over 16 years. So
and a lot has happened in that time.
A lot has happened, yeah. So after my adoption, I grew up in Washington State. I lived there for about 9 years until the summer of 2017, and that's when my family migrated to Texas. So,
Wow.
I was homeschooled and grew up in a very conservative Christian home, and so have a lot of the, all the Christian characteristics. But it wasn't until September of 2018 that I surrendered my life to Jesus, and that's a whole story in itself. So
so tell us a little bit about your background as far as so you were adopted from Ethiopia, and then tell us a little bit about your childhood and the struggles that you went to that kind of bring you to now.
Okay. Yeah, so I think my childhood, initially was great. Things took a turn when in 2013 my adopted mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I think that really affected the family dynamic a lot because just the focus shifted to just, tending to her and taking care of her and so on. And so that really left me and my siblings really just to raise ourselves. I say that lightly because, my parents were still in the home, and so were our older siblings. So we had some supervision, but I feel like from that moment, we just kind of grew up kind of on our own. And so, and after that, I don't think things were ever the same. 2013 is also when my parents adopted the final 2 of their adopted children. So they raised 9 children of their own, and then they adopted 9 children. So they adopted, 2 from China, and then they adopted 4 from Ethiopia, and then they adopted 1 from Japan, and then they added the final 2 from China in 2013. So
tell us a little bit about who you were as a kid. Would you say you were following Jesus from a young age?
That's a good question. So I don't know. That's okay. So maybe I'll take it back a little bit. Back to before my adoption, right? So I was born into an Ethiopian Orthodox family. My dad was a devout Orthodox, and so since birth, basically, I feel like he was determined to make me the next him. So he would drag me. Oftentimes when my mom and my 2 older sisters, were staying home, he was determined to take me along with him. And so I found myself to go into all these different prayers and just different gatherings and so on. I feel like at about age 5, I became, just a little bit more aware that my mom and my sisters were staying home. My friends in the neighborhood were enjoying their Saturday, playing and doing whatever, and I was the only one that was going to these events. And so I just one morning we had to wake up super early because we walked to the church. So my dad was busy doing something, and I was supposed to be putting my shoes on, and I decided, you know what, this was the day that I wasn't gonna go. So
how did that turn out?
Across the street was a Christian church, and so I just ran out the house and ran into it was a gated church. So I went into the church, and so my father, he walks outside and he's calling for me from across the street. Come on, let's go. We're going to be late. And I was like, no, I'm not coming. And so I felt bad for him, but after several minutes of just calling, he wasn't going to come into the church. I think he just had a strong superstition about the whole Christian community. So he decided he was going to go on his own. And then since that day, he never really made me go with him.
And did you start attending that church?
I did.
That's fascinating.
It was a crazy set of circumstances. There were a couple of kids my age, just several houses up the street from me, and they were really good people. They also attended that church. So they were our family friends, and I got to know them well, and they ended up inviting me to the church and so teaching me about the Bible. I still remember going through little just like kid books with the stories of Jonah and other Bible stories.
Wow.
Yeah, so eventually, so what happens is my mom becomes, my biological mom, she becomes ill, and then some ladies from the church come and pray for her, and she becomes better. And then I feel like just I don't know what the time frame is, but maybe about a year or so later, same thing happens. My dad becomes really ill, and then some guys from the church came, laid hands on him, prayed,
and he accepts prayer. Even though he wouldn't enter their church.
Right, yeah, he accepts prayer. I think by then, by that time, so I guess I've started going regularly, and my mom, I guess she's become a little bit more okay with it, and so he has become a little bit more okay with it. I don't think he had much of an option because he was sick, had been sick for a few days at that point, and it was like, hey, the guys are
get a little
from
desperate.
The church, right?
Yeah.
They're going to pray for you. Are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe grudgingly, right?
Right.
But they pray for him, and he gets better.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I think that was just the tipping point that he needed, because he's witnessed other miracles before. But so that was just the final straw, and so he rounds up all the posters we have in the house of Mary and the apostles and
icons.
Angels. Yeah, exactly. Wow. And I don't know. I saw him take it out into the back. I didn't know if he was gonna burn them or throw them in the toilet. The outhouse. I don't know what he did with them, but I never saw those again. The only posters we had were Jesus and him holding the lambs.
Wow.
Jesus the Good Shepherd, and so.
So did your dad have icons that he would kneel before and pray in the house? Did you guys have a prayer corner? I know that's something they do in some Catholics that I've talked to.
So I don't think we had any icons, not that I remember.
Okay.
But speaking of icons, my grandmother from my mom's side, I don't even think she was not Catholic. It was some pagan worship, but she would set out food in the corner for beings, and so I guess I have a really crazy religious background.
Yeah.
So
that's so unique for my perspective, where I grew up in the United States, where we don't really have nearly as much Eastern religion.
Right.
And so that stuff is so foreign to me. So that's really fascinating that was going on all around you.
Yeah.
And what was the, do you know the denomination or the type of church that you were going to that was the Christian church across the street? Or was it just kind of Christian body,
I'm trying to remember. So the January of 2023, I went back for the first time since I've been in the States. And I don't know if it was the same church or if it was a different church, but there was a church in that exact location. And I'm trying to remember what denomination they were. But I'm thinking some kind of a Protestant denomination, right? So I'm not sure if it's Pentecostal, but I mean, sure. I'm trying to place the different forms of worship we had,
right?
And I can't.
But in that Eastern perspective, in that culture, probably the Protestants, that's as specific as it gets, because it's not here where it's all Protestants, and it diversifies so much from there, where it's all the Protestants meet together in one church because there's one Protestant church maybe.
I remember there being a very radical church across town in the other direction, and they were I guess they would be what we would call Pentecostals.
Okay.
Yeah, here in America, right? Because they were jumping and yelling and at first it was kind of crazy, but I feel later our mom actually ended up liking that one better.
Yeah.
And even more people in my little community, because we were seeing more radical healings and so on, and we just felt the other church that we were going to was just too chill. We wanted to be a part of something that was moving forward. And
that happens here too. We have the charismatics and kind of the regular church where it's Baptist and charismatic. And me personally, I attend a Baptist church and a charismatic church, and just the contrast is kind of interesting, because one, you have them very reverent, they're not going to raise their hands, and then you have the charismatics, and they're all jumping and stuff like that. Where Pentecostal, Pentecostal is its own thing, but there's kind of that range of how do we worship God? Is it kind of still, or is it kind of crazy? But that's so fascinating. And so where did it kind of go from that? So you guys were started kind of going to Protestant churches, and your parents kind of bought into that as well, because they were receiving healing.
Yes. So my dad just switches gears, basically. So from making me go to, an Orthodox church, he now is requiring that I go to this church. Every Sunday.
Yeah.
And there's some little things that just are meaningful to me. I guess one of the reasons is because he's no longer with us. He's gone on to be with Jesus. But a lot of the things, I'll give you a glimpse into my childhood. I would wake up in the middle of the night terrified because, I don't know, sometime in the middle of the night, I can't, maybe it's 12, midnight. We had a Muslim mosque or a tower somewhere in the area. It wasn't close to us, but their call for prayer would go off, and I would just jump up terrified, right? And then sometimes I'd just crawl in bed with mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
Because it was scary. So one of the things my dad just started doing to help me have a more peaceful night's rest was he would take his Bible and put it as my pillow or under my pillow.
Yeah.
And I just feel that was just so touching, so meaningful, because he had full faith in God and the power of God, right? And so yes, so I go to the church. I become very devout in my faith, which is kind of crazy to say because I never always practiced my faith. So I was the kind of kid who, when I was in church, I was devout there. I may be praying harder than anyone else. I may be, just tears may be streaming down my face, and I was sincere, right? But when I'm hanging out with the neighborhood gang, I was also doing whatever. I had a conscience. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it wasn't stopping me from doing what they were doing. So I guess I was in a two-faced person, right? Two fronts there. But as I continued, to get older, I felt like I was getting into more and more things that I shouldn't do. I mean, I was there to the point where I was like stealing from my own family members, like, yeah, and, you know, headed to much worse. And so in 2008, you know, I feel like God steps in and breaks that cycle. And so I get removed from that environment because it was a very, like, my family was incredible, but the neighborhood and the village and the culture that we lived in was just terrible. Yeah. And so I get, you know, radically removed from that and placed in a Christian home. Yeah. And so
tell us a little bit about that, about kind of that transition. Sorry to break up like your story about Jesus, because this is so fascinating, but tell us a little bit about why you ended up getting adopted into the United States.
Absolutely. So I think it's a little bit of both, like an accident and a divine appointment, if you can say.
Of course.
So in the town that we lived in, my family lived in, there's an adoption agencies, and they have 2 locations on opposite sides of town. And so I attended school, and so the adoption agency has like a campus where they, I guess, house orphans, kids who didn't have parents, and then they have, you know, an adoption system where kids can get adopted and, you know, placed in homes, you know, outside of the country. So it's in America, let's say. So. Yeah. So my sister and her friends one day were taking a walk, right? And they passed one of the campuses, and they look inside, like, it's just, everything over there is gated. So, so they look in the gated community there, and they see, you know, just like a playground, right? Swing sets and so on. And they were like, hey, let's sneak in there and swing on those swings. So they go and they swing on the swings, apparently. And then, but, you know, they didn't know that there were people in the office just, you know, over that were watching them. And so the managers come out and they're like, hey, come on, we want to ask you guys some questions. And they're like, oh my goodness, we're in trouble, right? So, but they call them in the office and they're like, hey, you know, do you ever want to go to America? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, if you know, do you have brothers and sisters? They're like, yes. You know, what are their names? You know, so, and so. And so these people are like recording all this stuff. And then, you know, at the end of the interview, basically they, you know, let them go. And
they get added to some adoption database?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We get a call, right? We get a call sometime later, and they're like, hey, we want to film a video and that we can, you know, put with your profile for adoption. Yeah. And we didn't know what this was all about at the time, and we were like, oh, we've seen other kids in the community do this. They have, you know, some sponsoring families in America who send them toys and all these other good things. Wouldn't that be nice if we were these like sponsored children, right? So we're like, that's great, let's go, right? So we come, they're like, sing us a song, right? So we're like, okay, let's sing a song. And we create this little video, and then that was really it. And then later it was like, okay, we may have found you a family. Like, you know, several months later, it was like, we get a call, it's like, you know, are you willing to go to America? And my parents were like, no. They're not going to America. They're going to stay here. I mean, if the people in America want to help them here, that's great. But like, we're not letting our children go. And so that was the end of that. And I was so bummed out because that was like my opportunity to come to America. Right. But several months passed by, and then some other things happened. So we have another family, you know, who also had kids. We knew that had kids and so on. And both parents suddenly pass away, and all of their children become orphaned, right? And some of them, you know, just start, you know, doing weird things, odd things, just to survive and so on.
There's
and
not that kind of support in Ethiopia that there is
right,
in the United States.
Right. So our parents, maybe it was just a little bit of a wake-up moment. And so they realized, oh, that could be us. And I think it was more real because at the time they were both suffering from tuberculosis. So, and over there where they didn't have the proper medication and treatment, it was pretty fatal. And then my older sister, Kiara, she is also coming down with tuberculosis. The same girl that got us all signed up. So, and she was making frequent visits to the hospital in the town, and she was losing a lot of weight, and it was just like she was getting worse and worse, progressively worse. So, I don't know how the opportunity came again. I don't know if the agency just reached back out and asked if we were going to reconsider, or
if they reached out.
Or if they reached out, yeah, I don't know what that connection was, but so we were given a second chance, right? Yeah. And after, a lot of discussion between my parents, they decided that they were going to let us be adopted. So
All of the siblings got adopted by one family.
Yes, and I am so thankful. That was my biological mother's idea. During the paperwork, she specified that we stay together, and at the time, I thought it was no big deal. Like, of course we're going to stay together. And then after I've been adopted and I've, met up with so many other adopted children in the States where, the siblings didn't stay together, I just came to, become so grateful to my mom for her forethought in that moment. So
yeah, parents are a lot more recognizing of that, because even when I was a kid, I remember thinking, like, I'm going to get out of here as soon as possible. Like, I don't need my family.
Right.
I can be solo. But then as soon as you're solo, you're like, oh, family's so important.
Yeah. Yeah,
of course. So you ended up getting all of the siblings get adopted to a family in Washington?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we lived in a town called Longview, there by Vancouver, about 45 minutes from Vancouver. So southwestern Washington. We lived there for 9 years. It was all right.
And so that's where you went to high school?
Well, we were homeschooled.
Okay,
so.
Right, homeschooled.
Yeah, we were homeschooled. We had my parents had a homeschool curriculum that
very conservative upbringing. Your parents wanted to keep you kind of separated from the things of this world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I think that was relieving. Especially during my first year in America, we didn't speak English, but we could kind of understand it. And as time went on, we understood more and we learned more. And so just a couple months after, so we arrived in the States June. So June of 2008 was when we came to the States. And so, I don't know, maybe it was August, coming into September, right? I heard talks amongst the family that we were going to start school, and I knew what that meant. And I was like, oh shoot, I am not ready to go to a public school. I can't speak the language. I'm going to be made fun of. I was just like, it felt like my world was falling apart. Yeah. And then, but when we did start school, it was like, oh, we were at home, right? I was like, oh, this is so relieving. I don't have to go to a public school, because I wasn't, confident in my English speaking abilities at the time. And so all I could think was being misunderstood and being made fun of. And so.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about these kind of middle years where obviously you kind of run into some trouble, right?
Yes, and a lot of my troubles kind of started later on. There was a lot of just things that I did as a kid that I wouldn't call trouble. It was just being a kid. But I feel like my main troubles kind of started after 2013. So I was 13 at the time. That fall, my mom gets diagnosed with cancer. And then before the end of that year, I have, two additional siblings, and one of them is a younger brother. Yeah. Up until then, I've always wanted a younger brother, for a long time. So I was adopted in 2008. And from 2008 to 2012, maybe just 4 years, but it feels like forever, right? So I'm like, man, I wish I had a brother who was my age. And this was the case in my own biological family. I guess I've always been wanting a brother. But so in 2012, my parents adopt a brother, but he's a newborn.
Yeah.
He was born, his mom couldn't take care of him, and so she was like, I guess they had because we were wanting to adopt from Japan shortly after, because the tsunami happened in like 2011, right? Yes, it happened in the big Japan, yes,
right. Okay, yeah.
in 2011, and we've been wanting to adopt from Japan, and so in 2012, literally January of 2012, this lady had this baby. She couldn't take care of him, and I guess we were on a waiting list over there. And so she was like, I want that family to take care of my son. And so we got this newborn, right? And so he was a brother, right? Great. But like I couldn't play with him like I wanted to. So
a companion.
exactly. So I was like, it was great to have a brother, and I was like looking forward to the day when he would be old enough to understand. But in 2013, I guess it was like that fall winter season when my parents adopted a 7-year-old, and I was 13. So a little bit more age compatible there. Not quite like my age, but he was gonna understand a little bit more than my other younger brother. So, but I feel like my parents entrusted me a little too much with the care of my new brother, Christopher. I was supposed to be his role model and everything and so on. And so, but at the time I was struggling with, my own identity and who I was and what I wanted to become. And so I wasn't a great role model. And also just because I didn't have a lot of patience, and he required a lot of patience. So I don't know, I guess from there, I just turned to like working. Yeah. I was like, I didn't want any responsibility in taking care of my brother. And so, yeah, exactly. Whenever I could get out of the room or the house, I was like, I couldn't get in trouble if I was working. Right. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. So, and I think that was like my outlet, and working in music. Like I had this little Apple AirPod, the little square ones back in the day, and so I was just put my headphones on and blast my music, and I was just like, that was my escape from everything that was just going on inside me and around me at the time. And so that goes on for, a few years. And so in 2017, we move here, not to Waco, but to a small town, I guess it's east of here. It's called Mahia. And then like shortly after we move, my mom leaves to go to Peru to receive some more cancer treatments, exactly. So she was gone for months, and so my dad was always exactly. Yeah, my dad was working. Our older sister was taking care of us. Basically, we were kind of taking care of ourselves at times, and so again, that just leaves a lot of like gaps for you to like wonder like who you are, what your purpose is, and so on and so on. And so when my mom comes home, it's like, oh, yay, she's home. But also it's just like, okay, time to clean the house, right? Like, like, where were you when I was gone? I was like, oh, And so I think that just started a series of friction, headbutts.
During, formative years for you, and then
right.
Coming back and that relationship between you and your mom.
Yeah. So basically, mom's like cleaning house. She's like, I don't like all these things you're doing. Your attitude just stinks, and so we gotta clean you, or else you're being kicked out, right? And so and then just new grounds is like, hey, I know you like pray and read the Bible and profess to be a Christian, but like your fruits, your work is not matching up to where you should be. And so that was like also a challenge to my faith. And now I'm questioning my faith, right? Like I'm like, am I saved? I do all the things I'm supposed to be doing. And so that just sets me on a course of just like, I don't know if I'm saved or not. Yeah. And so
at this time, are you attending church regularly?
No, my family has always had like an on and off relationship with churches. Yeah. because again, we're very conservative, and so sometimes we would find a church, and then we would attend it for a few weeks, and then it was just like, oh, we don't agree with that particular teaching. Right. Come on, we're pulling our kids out, right? Like
very strict. I feel like I had kind of a similar family kind of dynamic where it was often that we would end up leaving churches because it's like we had the way that we did things, and it was hard to find like. You are a community. Like, it's a big family, you are a community, and you kind of have your own operating. And so when you try to connect with another community, that's so hard to connect all of your kids, especially with a very conservative parent. It's like, okay, this is the way we're doing it. We don't want our kids to be taught this.
Absolutely. Yep, exactly that. So, so we didn't often attend church for I guess it was like 9, 10. How long did I stay? So I was adopted in 2008, and I was with my parents until 2019. So for the 11 years, right, that that I was growing up, we maybe attended church like a handful of times.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
so a few times in Washington State. And then after we moved to Texas, the Texas people are so friendly. Everyone, as soon as we got into town, we had like 30. I'm exaggerating here, but like everyone was inviting us to their churches, and so we were kind of trying that a little bit, and we eventually settled on 2 different churches. We attended this one for a little bit, and then kind of went back to this one, and we attended that one for a few months, I think, and then eventually there was just one particular teaching, or it was maybe like a series of like little things that my parents disagreed with, and so we ended up just not attending that church altogether. But by then we were already like dealing with a lot, so my parents, especially my mom, her health conditions began to decline after she came back from Peru. I don't think...
Did those Peru treatments help her?
Yes. So right, because she wasn't able to go back. Maybe it was like a finance thing. And so I don't know what happened to, just like pursuing treatment in that. But maybe she just like settled for the options that were available to her. And so her health began to decline, and my dad started working out of town 4 days a week up in Arlington, and so he was only home on the weekends, and whenever he was home, he was really just taking care of our mom and getting ready to leave again for the next 4 days. So again, more time, I'm just like, okay, at the time I was like 18, so I knew what I was supposed to be doing, but it was just like less
guidance from your parents.
Less guidance, yes, from my parents, and so eventually it just comes to like a breaking point. My parents are like, hey, we don't know what to do with you. We're considering to just kick you out, and actually slept on the porch a few nights because I had to. They wanted to like just give me the experience of just like, hey,
you're under this. Like they wanted to like just get an easy change from you.
Right.
They didn't really want to like give you a lot of guidance, but then it was like, okay, you're not doing well.
Yeah, so, like, I guess they just assumed that based on everything that taught me up until that point, I should just know. And maybe it was just like, I don't know if they thought it was like a switch in me that I should just flip. But it wasn't very clear to me. I'm like, I feel like I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. Like I was doing my best to follow the rules and do everything, but...
It wasn't that you were being rebellious, but they took it as rebellion.
Exactly, yeah. And I never understood that because I was like, I follow the rules more closely than all the other kids. Like, a lot of times, like, I would get in trouble because I would, tell my parents, I was doing what you said. Like, you said this. And so then that...
Lacking guidance, and with them dealing with illness and so many kids and probably financial issues from all the treatment.
Right, yeah.
Let's put you guys in a hard spot.
Yep. So, yes, I remember it being a Saturday, and that was kind of like the breaking point for me. After I was like the second or third night of being on the porch, And it was almost like I was shunned from basically the rest of the family, no communication with my siblings and so on. I was like, that was the breaking point. I was like, okay. I totaled up the sum of like the past, however many years. I was like, okay, it's been 8-9 years and I haven't changed. I'm the same person. I doubt I'm going to change overnight. Yeah. And if God is there, He's not answering my prayers. And so...
What were your prayers at that time?
God changed me. Like, my parents...
wanted to fit in.
Exactly.
Wanted to, like, have a relationship with your parents.
Exactly.
But it just wasn't working.
It was not working. And I mean, like, I've done my own prayers of salvation. I'm just like, okay, God, like, I believe, like, change me, right? Like, I wanted to notice there to be a noticeable change so that I can like finally be accepted by my parents, right? And that was non-existent. So I was like, okay, that's it. This is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go be as bad as I can be. I might be a murderer, a killer. I'm gonna be bad. And then when I've killed so many people, maybe God's gonna step in and intervene. And then I'll...
Something drastic.
Exactly. I was looking for like a Damascus Road experience, right? Like nobody's going to question my salvation because there's going to be evidence, right? Everyone's going to know. And that was my plan. I was like getting ready to go do that, right? And so like that afternoon, my parents called me in the house and they're like, okay, we thought and we just can't seem to figure out what to do with you. We want to hear your plans, right? I was like, great, this is my plan. I do have a plan, right? So this is what I'm going to do. And I don't know if I feel like that it shocked them a little bit. And my dad's like, but what about God? Where's God in all this? And I'm like, let God do whatever God wants to do. When He is trying to intervene because I'm doing all these bad things, then we'll have a conversation. Then I'll ask Him all these questions of where were you, why haven't you answered my prayers? I will have a talk with Him. And that was my mindset. And somewhere in that conversation, I don't know what happened, but I just started seeing things a little bit differently. It was almost like there was a film rolling in my head, and I began to like see the love of God. So just like started as God being, right, like the supreme ultimate being, right, the highest of all, right? He's enthroned in heaven with angels, and every being is like bowing down, and so He leaves that glory, right? He leaves all of that. He willingly puts that aside to come and be born as a helpless baby, right? Like, I mean, someone had to take care of Him, someone had to feed Him, change His diapers. Like, I mean, He went through the full human experience, right? And so I was like, man, how humiliating is that, right? Like, that is, I mean, if I was a God, I was a deity, I wouldn't want to, right? Like, I wouldn't want to go through that, but he went through that, and then as I continued to think more on that, right? So His own creation, He grows older, the people that He made, right? Like, just reject Him, ridicule Him, beat Him, and I can only imagine, like, if you had a son or a kid, your own children just, like, abusing you, basically, right? Like, and I was like, that is terrible. And then He endures all that, and receives all the beating, and then is like crucified, and then and while He's on the cross, right, He has all power to stop everything, and yet he restrains Himself from that. And then all the people are like mocking Him and saying, if you're really the Son of God, won't you come down? Won't you show your power, right? And I feel like that if I was in His shoes then, that would be my breaking point. Exactly. I have so much pride in me. I'll be like, terror, right? Like, let me show you what I got. But he doesn't, right? He willingly dies so that we can have eternal life. He bought our salvation with His death on the cross. And so, and then once I realized that, I was like, man, God really went through a lot for me. right? And I'm sure if he...
When did you realize this? Because you're having these issues with your parents. Are you fully kicked out of the house?
No, I'm still like in the same conversation. Like we're having a conversation.
You decided to push God out, and you decided to live, do all these things.
Right.
And so what was the timeline there? Then you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah, so when my parents called me in to ask about my plans, we're having a conversation, but all that is going on in my head. So
this is all the same time?
Yes, it's all happening at the same time. And so I'm just like, wow, God really loves me. I'm like hearing what they're saying, but like I'm also like watching this film rolling in my head, right? Like I'm just like, wow. And so what I realized was two things. One, I know why my prayers weren't getting answered. It was almost as if God's like, you're not willing to give me all of you. Like, you have to give me all of you. And there were areas of my life, my past, that I was not willing to come forward with. I knew the things that I've done. I was not, proud of the things. I was ashamed of the things that I've done. And I wasn't ready to confess them to nobody. Right? And so I feel like these areas of my life I was still holding on to, and God wanted all of me, right? Yeah. And so in the past, I was like, no, God, I'd rather die before I, come clean about this, right? And so at the time, though, once I realized, it's like, it's my pride and my shame that's getting in the way of my salvation. And Jesus went through so much shame, right? Yeah. The other kind of revelation that I've had was, when they beat Jesus and stuff like that, they, take all his clothes. And so he's hanging shamefully naked in front of the entire world, right? I can't imagine me being in that case. Like, I would fight, right? But like, he endured. Exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, he went through so much shame, more shame than I can even imagine. And so I was like, God, if you did this for me, I'm willing. I surrender. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Was it in that conversation? It was still in that conversation. So
was it like I'm just trying to imagine this. Was it your parents talking? Or like were you like in this conversation? Or what was this conversation like exactly?
So I'm trying to remember because I feel it's still back and forth, right? Like, so my parents are, a lot of times when my parents call you in to talk with you, it's a lot of one way. They're doing most of this.
They're kind of like preaching to you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you have a lot of time to just think.
But in that moment, did you feel humiliated? Or were they actually reaching you? Was it like what you were receiving, was it good or was it bad? Like from them, because you're having these thoughts of like, okay.
I feel like for the first time, for one of the few moments, I was like, I didn't have anything at stake, so I wasn't afraid to voice my thoughts, right?
Because you had given it all up.
Exactly.
Like, so you were
and
in that moment.
I think my parents saw that sincerity. Like, they were like, oh, he's going to do it. Right? Like, so usually when I'm like having a conversation with my parents, I'm just like trying to give them what they want to hear so that I can get out of this situation.
So you've given that up?
I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be my own person. So, I was like, yep, this is this. They're like, where's God? I'm like, let God do whatever he wants to do. Yeah. This is where I'm going. Yeah. Right? And so I'm sure they were, telling me more things, but like, I feel like I don't remember anything else. So, but what I do remember is just like imagining, Jesus' death on the cross as, the price paid for a ticket to heaven, right? And so, and my plans were like, I was gonna go do whatever. And so it's possible that I could die in this. And what was kind of like scary and eye-opening at the same time was like, if I die and I don't have this ticket to heaven, I'm going to hell. Yeah. I knew that. So I was like, the price has already been paid. This ticket is just sitting right here on the table. I'm a fool if I don't take it wherever I go, right? Yeah. Just have that in the back pocket. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm ready. And so I was like, you know what? I'm ready to accept Christ. And my parents were like, okay. Yeah. So they led me into prayer, and I just felt, an overwhelming just like joy and peace and settled. I had faced my fear. Yeah, like I had done the one thing that I wasn't ever gonna do because of my shame, but now that shame has been removed, I was like, yeah, I'm ready. And I knew what I was getting into. So a lot of times when, like you go to a charismatic church and you like, exactly, right? You're doing it, it's very emotion based, right? But I had no, it was not emotion based. It was, exactly, right. Like it was all logical. I had reasoned like, okay, I need this. And Christ has already gone through so much, shown so much more love for me than I can, ever imagine. And so I was like, you know what? And so with that, right, like comes the cost of discipleship, the cost of following Christ, right? I knew I was going to face adversity. I'd been a Bible student up until this. So I was like, I knew I was going to face challenges. So I was like, am I willing to go through that? And I was like, yes, because what it was for me was like I had been behind the wheel of my life for the past 18 years, and it's been a wreck. I don't need to look far to see it's been a wreck after a wreck. I was like, okay, Jesus promises that if I give him control, he's going to lead me in green pastures and beside still waters, right? Like he's going to take me places where I couldn't go. It's like, okay, let's go on a limb. Let's try this, and let's let Jesus have the wheel and see where he leads me. And it's been, I haven't regretted it.
So how does this lead you to being basically kicked out by your parents completely?
Okay, so I become saved that day, September 8th.
Praise God.
Yeah, of 2018. So I become saved that day, and I just go through the newborn Christian phase, right? Like literally, yeah, everyone is doting on you. Everyone is just
everything's bright and shiny.
Everything is bright and shiny, and that lasts maybe 2 or 3 months. Yeah. And then after that, I feel like I was reading the Bible, and I don't know. It was like, hey, hard times are coming. I was like, wait, this can't be true. I don't know what changed, but something changed in the situation, and I knew the thing that happened to change everything, but I don't think that was it. That was just the front for something much deeper.
The Spirit is leading you now.
Yes.
And so God is gives you this, but then He also is sobering you.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, this is not what it is.
Exactly.
It's not receiving all of this stuff, but it's actually, I'm going to take you through hard.
Exactly.
He prepares us for that.
Yes.
So then we do go through the hard season, and our faith is tested, and He brings that and works it for good.
Yep. Yeah. So what was it?
So what's the catalyst to get you kicked out?
It's really just a little thing, a minor case between my two siblings. And at the moment, I didn't know, whether I was to intervene in this, let them figure it out, or maybe bring this to my parents' attention. But eventually, I bring it to my parents' attention.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those things where they, feel like I should know this. I should have enough discernment in things like this to where I can figure these things out. And so basically, they get upset with me, and then again, as a tipping point, it brings oh, you know what? This is not just for this situation, but for all the other situations that you should have, known, loved.
They see a
cared.
Consistent pattern
exactly.
that they don't want to tolerate anymore.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha.
So well said. They see a consistent pattern. They don't want to tolerate it anymore. And they're done. They want me out. And so eventually they, do kick me out of the house, and I get, basically shunned by the family, excommunicated. And so, I'm living in a tent, and then my two older sisters go through the same thing, They give us, tents, and we're, sleeping in these tents. And then, of course, we're working because our parents are like, well, since we're still feeding you and technically still, housing you, you're living on our property, we feel like you should pay your rent. But since you don't have a job, why don't you work from sunup to sundown and, pay your rent that way, right? So, we had 40-acre property. The house rested on, about 7 acres. And so my sisters and I were out there, every day, rain, shine, heat, cold. We built a fence around the property. We dug a water line. We have
while sleeping in tents.
Yeah, while sleeping in tents. While eating like meager amounts of food. Like oftentimes we would miss a meal. And our whole feeding system was just, it was just messed up because, I don't know how to say it without saying it. Like sometimes they would let us know, right? Because we didn't go inside to eat, right? So they just brought our food outside. And so,
but you would either come out or wouldn't.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. So sometimes, they would say, "Hey, your food's out there," and sometimes they don't, right? Yeah. But if we were too busy working and didn't realize our food was over there, and they look outside and I guess they don't want it, so they take it back and put it in the trash, right? And then other times, they could be busy with their own things and then just forget about us. It's happened, And so, because of, the, harsh manual labor and, the insufficient food supply, it was we lost tremendous amount of weight, a scary amount of weight. And apparently our parents didn't think it was a problem, or they thought, we were wanting to lose weight. This was our plan. And so,
they're not eating because they have a completely different perspective because they're not talking with you guys.
Exactly. And so, so this goes on for several months. How
old are you now? 18?
So I'm still 18. Okay. I got kicked out of the house. So it was November. It's crazy. November of 2018.
Okay.
Right. So through that winter, actually, I don't think we went straight into sleeping in tents. So I got kicked out in November of 2019. I was living in, it was like a workshop, but it was air conditioned and so on. So they set me up with a cot in there, and still, I was grateful to have a roof over my head, but just the system was messed up because my older brother also lived in there because there was a living basically area there with but the way that he treated me and that was just not pleasant. And so so I lived there for a little bit, and then I guess my parents decide, you know what, you're gonna stay in a tent. So we moved to a tent. We're working sun up to sundown, and then so we're working sun up to sundown and so on, and then we're doing all these manual labors, building a fence, digging a pipeline, literally a trench all the way to our gate, which is almost half a mile away, and then we're digging another line out to the garden, and a lot of times the rain would come in and just wash everything that we dug out, and so now we had to go in there and get all that stuff out of there, and so these are the kind of things we're doing, right? And so we lose a lot of weight, and then there comes a point where I guess it's just my parents had an idea. I was we actually haven't gotten our high school. We haven't completed, our education, homeschooling at the time. So it's you know what, we're going to take you off your homeschooling and just get you in a GED prep program. And then you can go get your GED. And so that was very much incentivized by our parents because, hey, then you can go get a real job, make your own money, and buy your own things. And it was oh my goodness, it was almost like a light at the end of a tunnel. The way out of this gruesome, living situation was finish your education, and then you can be on your way, right? And so I took that bait. I mean, so did my sisters, but like I especially just like I bit the bullet, and So
you start working harder, try to persevere, push through.
Exactly. Yes. So, but in January, I completed the GED prep course, and then in February, my dad drove me to Corsicana to take the GED exam, and I'm just like hoping and praying. Like it was like a lot of difficult questions, and then the word comes back, and oh yay, I passed. I got my high school, equivalency, and I was like, yes, I'm free now, right? But then like I was like, my parents were like, okay, now you gotta wait for your siblings. So
they wanted you to stay.
I'm like in this limbo here. I'm like, okay, so I got a bunch of time because now I'm not, working on my schoolwork. He's like, yeah, let's put you back outside. You go do more work. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm back to where I started. And then, my sisters, they were going through a lot. And so when they finished, my parents, take them, my dad takes them to go take it again. And, they failed once or twice, right?
Yeah.
And then they get a backlash, for, wasting time and money, right? Like, as if they didn't care, as if they didn't want to get out of this situation. And so there's just a lot more that goes into that, but eventually, a whole year passes. So we were in February when I got my GED. We go through summer, still working through the Texas heat, right? And then somewhere like in May or something like that, they decide, you know what, we're gonna send them into the military. Yeah, at this point, we kind of knew they wanted to get rid of us, right? And it was like, but like the almost like everything that they've done, the damage that they've done is making it worse. Because on another mission, my dad sent me to go get a job and don't come back until I have a job. So he put a resume in my backpack and said, go. And so I walked up and down I walked up and down Main Street and went into every single business. Yeah. Often, I was offering to work for free just to get started. Yeah. Like, nobody wanted to hire me. Yeah. It was crazy.
Because you didn't have a resume, or like you didn't have work experience, or a permanent address.
No, I feel like it was more so just because I looked like death. I was so malnourished at the time that it was like skin over skeleton. Like one lady was like, I don't want you to work for me. Just sit down. It was like a restaurant, like a burger shack or something like that. It's like, she was like, here, eat up.
Some kid, like malnourished kid.
Yeah. And maybe they thought I was on drugs. Right. I don't know.
Like homeless kid on drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, anyways, I couldn't get a job, and so that was more frustrations, towards me. Yeah. And so then my dad decides, you know what, we're gonna go to the recruiting office, right? Like, so we
military. Military.
Yeah, military. So we drive to Waxahachie to, I don't remember, it was like the Army recruiting office there, and we do the physical, right? Yeah. And then basically, the recruiter's like, I was like 60 pounds at the time. And he's like, yeah, come back when you've put like 60, 70 more pounds.
How tall are you?
I'm not 5 foot, 4'11".
And 60 pounds.
And 60 pounds, right. Wow. So, so, so that door was closed, right? Like, and so, back to working, and it was crazy. So eventually a lot of things happened. My older sister, they basically just put her on a bus and sent her to Missouri. And so my other sister, she ends up moving back into the house because they needed her to do chores there. My mom's health condition was, going kind of worse then, and so it was just me. And I got moved into the shop back to where I was initially, and then I'm still like working, and then more things happen.
So what puts an end to all this?
So this is what puts an end to this. My dad, as I mentioned earlier, is working out of town 4 days a week. When he's in town, he's taking care of the family, taking care of my mom, and then basically wrapping things up so that he can go back out of town again, right?
Okay.
My mom is, she's in terrible conditions. I'm not even sure because I'm not going into the house, but all I know is like I'm not supposed to even knock on the door for anything because she can't take any disturbance. She's got to have all the peace and rest she needs.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going on, and I'm not allowed to speak with my siblings, and they're not allowed to speak to me. If they do, it's very derogative. It's just like it's because of you. And I don't hold that against my siblings. It's more so my parents have just basically manipulated them to because it was either they went along with whatever my parents were doing or they were the next target. But again, I got a lot of backlash from them as well. And so, and then there was just one day that I was working, I was mowing the lawn like all day. And I went to see if there was they'd put the food out for me, and I checked, it wasn't there. I checked sometime later, it wasn't there, and I checked again. I was like, huh. And it was basically, I was really hungry, and I wanted to eat, right? So I was like, I know I'm not supposed to go knock on the door, but I think I'm hungry enough to the point where I'm willing to risk this, right? Yeah. So, and then after, just thinking about it some more, I was like, you know what, what can be the worst? I'm kind of living in a worse situation as it was. So, worst case scenario, I get really yelled at, but I might get some food. So, I go through the back door, and I knock, and my dad opens the door, and he's surprised to see me, right? It's like, what are you doing? I was like, can I have some food? I haven't eaten today. And so he goes and is like, was somebody supposed to feed this kid? And they're like, oh, my siblings are like, oh yeah, we were supposed to put some food out for him. And then my mom walks in the room, and then she sees me in the doorway. She's like, what are you doing in my house? Right? Dad's like, oh, he's asking for food. It's like, get out. And so I had no choice but to get out. And so I'm, gone around the back of the house. I'm leaned up against the wall, sitting, and just crying, thinking everything is what did I do wrong? Yeah. And so, anyway, eventually they, put out a peanut butter sandwich out, and then I eat it and go on my way. But that was kind of a situation that set up a new thing. It was okay, the next day my dad is we're implementing a new system. We're not going to feed you. We're going to give you your food for a week, and you have to be responsible to feed yourself. I was like, this is great. Right. And so, and it was until, it was so what ends up happens is he gives me my week's supply, I ration it out, and then when he's back in town again, he gets me the next week, and so on and so on. Well, 1 week, and usually he asks me, how are you? How's your food? Do you need more? So on. I was like, it's great, until I don't know, he was busy one weekend, and he didn't ask, and so I don't remember what had happened. I think I don't know if I had initiated that, or maybe I'd asked him, and then and maybe he forgot or whatever. But there was like 1 week that I kind of didn't get that, right? Like, and so, and then my dad had specifically told me, don't go knock on the door, don't ask, just, and so, and then I was like, okay, well, since I can't, I'll just tell my brother, right? Like, so I told him, and then my brother just goes off on me, and I was like, it's because you scarfed it all down, and you didn't consider. I was like, no, and so we had this really hard conversation, and then I don't know what happens after that, because he went on his way as far as whether he communicated that to my mom or my siblings in the house, no idea, right? And so now I'm just like spreading out like a jar of like peanut butter over the next few days, right? Yeah. And then I remember that one morning I just like, oh, here's my last scoop of peanut butter, and I like eat that off the spoon, and then I was like, well, guess I don't know what's happening next, right? So, and then, I mean, it's a really cold day, I'm working, and we had these like baby fences where, it's if you build a pen, you keep a baby inside, you don't want them to get out, right? Yeah. But we had chickens, so we used the same thing for the chickens, especially when they were, little chicks. And so I was like moving them from where they were by the chicken coop to the shop because the chickens were no longer chicks, and so we didn't need that for them no more. And it's made out of plastic, so it's supposed to be really light. But like I was struggling to carry, plastic pieces of fencing, right?
Because you're so light.
Exactly.
Weak,
yeah. And then so I see my brother coming into the house, and I'm like resting. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm taking a break." He's like, those are plastic pieces of fencing. Like, stop being so dramatic. Like, no, like, and so I guess I remind him again and about my food, and he's like storms off, and then I think like one of the last things that he said before he storms off is like, if you're so tired, why don't you just go to bed? I was like, after he leaves, I think about that. I was like, a great idea, right? Yeah. Like I'm so done that I'm just willing to give up.
So what was it that kept incentivizing you to work? Like, why was that not always at the forefront of like, I'm not going to work?
I think one of the incentives is that just like knowing that this wasn't going to be forever. Things are going to change. I was like thinking, and like, I'll be 30 one day and I won't be doing this. Like,
right.
I just got to get
as far
through
as
this
like
season.
day-to-day working for your parents, was it like the knowledge that they were the ones feeding you that like incentivized you to work?
I think it was like just the fact that they were my parents. Like, I mean,
just out of obedience.
Yeah.
I got you.
Just out of obedience. Like if I knew it, and maybe that was like one of the things that my parents, it's like growing up in a Christian household, you're taught biblical principles. Yeah. Like obey your parents, honor your parents. I mean, children, this is your, commandment, right? Like this is that you obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right? So it was like, I mean, as long as I was under their care,
you did what they said.
Yeah, I owed them my allegiance. So, yep, that's what's kept me going. So. And
then, like, what happens next? I mean, how do you end up getting out of this situation?
I feel like I'll just tell it to you. So after my brother leaves, I say, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to bed. So I finish what I was doing. Right. I move those crates, and then I go back to the shop. I get in my cot and I lay down, right? Yeah. On his way back, he sees me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you said if I was so tired, go to bed." Yeah. Right? Okay, so I mean, so basically ends up having another really hard conversation where he yells at me, and then he goes on to work, right? And I'm just there, and then I guess what happens next is very blurry. I mean, I feel like what happened is one of my younger sisters comes in, and she's like, Mom wants you to make a list of why she should feed you. I was like, cool. Easy enough to ask. I think I could do that. I'm writing like, oh, because I mow the lawn, and I do this, and I do that, right? And as I was writing, I just felt like my writing became slower and slower, and it was also getting closer and closer to my face. I was like, it was getting blurry, right? And it was also getting more squiggly, and I just remember going face forward, and I guess I'd fallen off of that, and we had like a cement floor there, so probably passed out, knocked myself out there. Yeah. The next thing I realized is I'm waking up in the hospital. I'm being rushed down an aisle with a bunch of,
IV and...
doctors and nurses all around me, right? So that was at the hospital in Mejia, and basically when I was like, I kind of knew I was in a hospital, but I just wanted to check, right? I was like, where am I? And so they're like, oh yeah, you're in the hospital. I was like, okay, cool. Where, are my parents aware of this? Where are they? It's just like, your mom, went home to take care of other kids, right? And so I was like, okay. And so they decided, you know what? We don't have all the equipment here to treat you. We're gonna transfer you to Waco. And so,
to what hospital?
I found out later it was Providence, but I didn't know. At the time, they were like, we're going to take you to Waco. Okay. And I was like, are my parents aware of this? Yeah. And they're like, yeah, we inform them, or we'll inform them. I was like, okay. So I get transported that night. So this is October 28th. So I get transported to Waco, and they
2020?
2019.
2019.
Yeah, still that same year. So, yeah, they do what they do. Eventually just moved me into the ICU. I was there for, 2 weeks, and they had me, on intensive care, and I'm just like, my system is just getting, being pumped with fluids, around the clock and so on. So yeah, I stay in the ICU for a week, and then my conditions, get better to the point where they can move me out of the ICU, but still in the hospital. So I stay there an additional week before they get ready to discharge me. But during my time in the hospital, obviously, nobody in my family comes to visit me. I've taken all the responsibility. Actually, there were 2 times that I called, right, because they were like, who's your point of contact? Do you have family? And I called my mom, and basically she told me, you know what? You're getting what you want. You're getting all the attention you wanted. So enjoy it. And basically, don't come back. Yeah, don't call, right? And so then after that, I was like, oh, I'm on my own. Yeah. So I'm like, answering all the questions. I was like, I'm not aware of my financial status, but okay, just bill it to my name, right?
Wow.
All these other things.
Right, who's providing for you? It's it's just me.
Yeah. So. So I guess I do tell the doctors don't call my parents because they don't want to be called. Yeah. And so, fast forward to, the following week where they're like, okay, we're getting ready to discharge you. Where do we send you? I was like, well, I have family in Mejia, but they don't really want to hear from me. Yeah. But I guess I could call them again and see if, they'll let me come home, right? Yeah. So I call my mom again, and I said, hey, I'm sorry for everything. They're getting ready to discharge me. I don't really have a place to go. And so, is it okay if I come home? I'm willing to do all my chores and so on. And so basically what my mom says is I'm going to speak about this with your dad. And eventually what, they decide is, hey, we are going to come see you, and then we're also going to bring a backpack with some clothes. If we come and visit and we think, you're a different person, we're going to let you come home with us. And if we think you're the same person, we're going to leave the backpack. And so they left the backpack. There was a lot of stuff that went down when they were there.
But ultimately, they decided that they didn't want you home.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
So, yep. And so, that day I realized, I was like, wow. Like, I knew the Bible says, when my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord, but like, that day was real. Like, literally, I was like, God, in your word you say this, but like, my parents just walked out on me, and I'm like, homeless, I'm in a strange town, without a friend, without a penny to my name. What am I going to do? So I had a little New Testament in my hospital room, and it was like a little testament with Psalms and Proverbs. And so I opened it up, and I was like, God, I'm going to open this. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to put my finger wherever it falls, and I'm going to trust that's your word for me. And so, if you don't mind, I would love to share it.
Yeah, of course.
So, my finger landed on Psalm 121. And Psalm 121 says, I will lift my eyes to the hill from where comes my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to be moved. He that keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he that keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. And then here is where I felt like, the Lord was talking directly to me, and it says, the Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will preserve you from all evil. He will preserve your soul. The Lord will preserve your going out and your coming in from this time forward, forevermore. And I was like, okay, God. I know you just made a promise to take care of me, and I'm going to trust your plan, your will.
So at this point in your life, with your parents being Christian and basically forsaking you and not being good parents, but you were a Christian before you were adopted into this family, and so were you dealing with any doubt? Were you dealing with any doubt of the goodness of God?
No. I was thankful. Because I remember thinking, wow, if this had happened before I had accepted Christ, there's no telling where I would be, right? Maybe I would have gone through with that plan right? But I was thankful that I knew I had a relationship with Christ. I was thankful that this happened after I had given my life to Christ, because now, in times of trouble, I knew who to turn to. Yeah. And so that's exactly what I did. I was like, you know what? They're gone. The only people that I've ever known in this country, literally. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm in God's hands. And so I didn't, again, I didn't have any hate towards them, because I was over 18. Yeah. And, they've always taught us that, after 18, they're no longer responsible for us, right? So I was like, well, I'm 19. I don't really under typical circumstances, I wouldn't be in their care. They've done their job of raising me. So now, I'm on my own. And so, I just, trusted in God and trusted His plan, even if it meant walking out into that street that day. I was willing, because I knew that God He wasn't gonna leave me or forsake me. And so I stayed at the hospital because the hospital staff basically was like, hey, you know what? It's November by this time, because it was October 28th.
It's cold outside.
Exactly.
It's Texas in November. Yeah.
Exactly. It was it was going to be below freezing that night. They're like, we don't want you, going out. Why don't you just stay over the weekend, and come Monday, we'll figure something out. I was like, okay. So I stay in the hospital over the weekend, and then come Monday, they give me two options. I could go to the homeless shelter, or I can go to a crisis respite center for MHMR. And so basically, so I didn't know what the crisis respite center was, but I did know what the homeless shelter was. Yeah. And my housekeeper was like, you don't want to go there, because I used to work there. And so I was like, I guess I'm going to the respite center. And so I was there for 7 days. It was great. It was not like a home.
Yeah.
But at the time for me, it was like a perfect alternative to being in the streets.
Yeah.
I had a roof over my head. I was, I had 3 consistent meals a day, plus snacks, entertainment if I wanted, to just watch TV.
Yeah.
So it was great, but I wasn't resting during that time. I wasn't like, this is wonderful, because I only had 7 days. So I was like busy trying to figure out where I was gonna go when my 7 days expired.
Trying to find a job, right?
Yeah. I was trying to find whatever, and so they had a case manager there. I was working with her, trying to connect with any homeless youth program or organization that was like maybe housing homeless youths, and it was very depressing, because a lot of the homeless youth services are for teenagers basically. And so, and I being over 18, I was like not qualified for them. But I was able to get in contact with a organization here that it didn't house homeless youth, but it provided them with resources.
Okay.
So a place to take shower, some clothes, some food, and so on. And so I called the number, I spoke with the case manager there, and I basically explained my situation. I was like, hey, I'm living here. I have 3 days left before I'm on the streets.
Yeah.
Like, what can you do?
Yeah.
And so she was like, let's meet up, let's talk about your case. And so then that's what we did the next day. She helped me, and then she was like, you know what? I have a friend who works in another organization, and they take care of housing. Maybe I can, we can go speak with her, and they may be able to help you in that. And so we go, we speak with this lady who works for EOAC. It's like a housing assistance program. And so she's like, hey, we just started a new initiative where we pay for people's hotel for them to stay in a hotel for like a month. Yeah. And so she was like, would you be interested? I was like, absolutely. Like, when is it possible to move there? And so, we did more paperwork. And so my case manager from the first program, which is the Central Texas Youth Services, she was like, okay, we're gonna, finish your 7 days there, which would put me back on Monday, right? Yeah. And so, and then hopefully by then your paperwork is processed enough to, get you to move into the hotel room. And I'm just like hoping and praying that there's no gaps between when I leave.
Right, you don't have to be homeless.
Exactly. So, and thankfully, come Monday, I'm moving my stuff into a hotel room. That's exactly what happens.
So you get this hotel. Like you're kind of in this bad situation, like homeless, dealing with all this stuff. Yeah. But you're finding like resources through these community programs and all this stuff, which is awesome. And you end up getting placed into housing eventually, right? Mm-hmm. In like the Methodist children's home, and then start going to community college. And like now you're at Baylor, so you've graduated with your associates. You're at Baylor, and you're like doing these crazy things. Like you're a very good student. You're very hard worker, and even like being a Baylor student itself is an accomplishment. Praise God. All glory to God. So yeah, like what do you think, like why were you able to kind of overcome that? Because you're kind of like you're at this low, but you never gave up. You never really gave in. Yeah. And so like what kept you going, and like what inspired you to like actually get an education? Because I feel like people kind of get in that bad situation and they try to just survive. But you were like, you went above and beyond. And even now, like with you completing races and stuff like that, like that's additional. Like you don't have to do that to live, to like have food. Right. But you're ambitious. Right. Why is that?
So I think a lot of, what drives me is like my faith in God, right? Like that's the key. As far as like how I got through those difficult moments, what kept me going is I was just doing the next thing in front of me.
Yeah.
And then I had, good people I came in contact with good people, and they were, always giving me good advice, right? And I was willing to listen. I think that moment of rejection from my parents, that homelessness, did something in me to where I had to depend on someone, other than myself, right? Like in God, who is higher than me, but also in people who knew their things, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I was my situation was almost ideal, right?
Yeah.
New town, no contact, no prior knowledge of anything, right? So I was homeschooled. So I was like, I have to depend on people. And it was kind of crazy because coming from a conservative family, you're always taught, don't take candy from strangers. Don't talk to strangers, right? But I was put in situations where I had to trust strangers and take the risk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my friend, the guy that I went to stay with, he could have, murdered me in my sleep. I'm not saying that's the kind of person.
You had to trust.
I had to trust.
And through all that, you had to trust in God as well.
In God, and I think that's what it was. Is like going back to Psalm 121. I knew I was ultimately in His care. Nothing can happen to me that He hasn't willed, and if He wills it to happen, it's for His glory, or whatever He wants to do with that. So I was willing to put myself in these, dangerous situations because I knew God got me. At the end of the day, I was in His hands. So I think that is kind of what kept me going. And then, of course, I received a lot of positive feedback. When I started MCC, it was not positive because I didn't know anything, and I felt lost. I've never gone to such a setting like college, high school, public school. I wasn't there, so and I ended up actually dropping out that semester. Yeah. But the opportunity resurfaced after. So in January, I moved into the Methodist Children's Home. Yeah. And so the end of that month, I moved there. And then but MCC was advertising their, 8-week courses that started in March, right? Yeah. Well, I was like, I guess I have, the stable housing is, not an issue anymore. I do have the opportunity to, basically try this again, and I was encouraged by my case manager, and so I gave it a try. Well, the day I was supposed to start, it was March something, but a global crisis happens, COVID-19, right? Yeah. And so education moves online, and so I felt a little bit more comfortable online because I was used to my homeschooling where we did a lot of it on the computer. So I was like, this is just like homeschool. Yeah. So
so you end up finally succeeding.
I do.
And you get an associate's in?
So I actually get 2 associates. I get an associate's in cybersecurity, and then I get a general associate's because by then I knew that I wanted to continue my education and I wanted to transfer.
Yeah, and so tell us about what you're doing now.
So, oh my goodness, now I'm about to close off my 2nd semester here at Baylor. Wow. So freshman year is about to be done. Yep. Yeah. So I am a member of the triathlon club, and so the end of this month, so...
And you're sponsored?
Yeah, well, no. I was. So last
you were sponsored.
Year,
okay.
Last year was when I was sponsored. Last year, I applied while in school, right? Yeah. While in school, I applied for an opportunity through the city of Waco for... a position. They have a thing called Team Waco, and so they sponsor several athletes to complete the Ironman 70.3 here in Waco. And so I applied, I get accepted, and I receive full sponsorship for that. And so I complete that, but through that I gained just so much more Ironman and Team Waco just connected me with, different people, different opportunities.
Yeah.
And so, and I also feel like exercise is just a way for me to
it's therapeutic.
Heal. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is very healing. And so just finding that community has just inspired me to just keep going, discover my potential in that realm, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm here discovering my potential in the educational realm.
And you're pursuing a bachelor's in
cybersecurity. So while I'm, discovering my potential in education, Ironman unlocked, my potential in, athletics. Yeah. So I was like, you know what, I might actually be good at this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, everything that you're doing now is so inspirational because you went through like a harder life than pretty much anyone I know, but you didn't really take away a pessimistic outlook, because I feel like, especially here in the United States, like we tend to be very pessimistic people. Like, it's because of my upbringing and it's because of this, it's because of that I'm not equipped to do these things. But you had one of the hardest upbringings, and you didn't forsake God. You kept your work ethic. And you actually took the good things out of that. I mean, even when you talk about it, to me, it's just like heartbreaking what you went through. But when you talk about it, you talk about probably the good things. You're probably sugarcoating it. And so, like, when I hear this story, it's inspirational. And to like see what you're doing now, I would have never realized. I mean, the extent of the difficulties that you've gone through. And like I've talked to you previously and got the short version of some of these things. And even then I didn't realize the extent and basically like trauma that you should have, but it seems like God has kind of protected you from that.
Yes. I feel like, again, that just comes to my faith and community. And then just, pursuing the next thing and then the next thing.
You kind of keep your head down.
Exactly, right. So I think the other thing that also kind of, because there was a moment, right, like I was questioning, right, like I was like, this is what it was like. So I was like, thank you, God, that, you brought me through all this stuff, right? Like I do see, myself, as having great character qualities. And this is really like, forged me into a better person than I would have been otherwise. But I was like, couldn't you have done this a different way? Right? Like, did you have
in those moments, you're probably dealing with doubt.
Right. I was like, did you have to lead me down this path? Right? Like, I'm so grateful to where I am now, but like, can we have done something different?
What would you say to people who are maybe watching this and are dealing with like difficult situations, or doubting the goodness of God, doubting that they should persevere? What would you say to those people?
So I would tell them what God told me, right? Like, so in answer to that prayer, God, was like, oh it was to build your character and all these other things. But it wasn't just for you. Like, I was like, oh, my trials weren't just for me. Like I went through this so that I can help others, because I mean there are so many others, like you're saying, who are struggling with similar things. And so when they hear the story of someone who has made it, right, like who's held on, who's persevered, to whom God was faithful, because that's what my story is, right? Is I called on the Lord and He heard me and He helped me, right? He made me a promise that He was going to take care of me, and He's keeping His word, right?
That's so powerful.
This is the testimony of God's goodness, right? So, and this is what I want to do. I want to put it out there that like God is good, God is faithful. He does keep His word, right? Just look at my life, right? Like I went through difficulties, but God has carried me through it, and His plan for me is so much better than I could have, imagined at the time.
Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you, Kaden. This is, it's really powerful and inspirational. And is there like anything that you want to, we kind of just that was kind of the take-home message. But what, like, do you have anything else that you want to add as far as like take-home message, call to action, Like anything that you'd like to finish up with?
I'm going to give this one a thought. Man, I think that's really it. It's just like, whatever you're going through, right? Like, we go through difficulties, and just, if you are a believer and you have faith in God, keep holding on. I've heard someone say, sometimes I ask God to take me a day at a time, and when I can't go a day, I ask God to take me a half a day at a time, right? So definitely, like, holding on is important, and never losing faith, never losing heart, just knowing that, like, two things. One, your trials, they do have an expiration date, right? Like, it's not forever. And two, no matter what happens, like, even if you live the life of Job on this earth, right? Like, there's a better place. Like, this is not home, right? Like, I feel like a lot of times we forget that, like, this is not home. Like, we try to make this home by living comfortably and trying to be as comfortable as possible, and yet we're called to be aliens and strangers here, right? So we're pilgrims. We're just passing through. So, I mean, even this is something that I would, say to a homeless person, right? Just having been homeless, right? Like, things may not change for that homeless guy today or tomorrow or maybe never. But if he has faith in Jesus, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but, like,
there's a reason. Like, there's a reason beyond this world.
And when he will go to a better place, right? So, like, no matter what happens here, take heart, because you're going to a better place, where there's no more sorrow, no more pain, no more tears. So keep holding on is probably what I'll say. Persevere.
Amen.
God is faithful.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much, Kaden.
My pleasure.
For coming on. You can find Kaden Huff on Instagram, correct?
Yep.
And, well, that'll all be in the description. And if you guys enjoyed this video, you can like, subscribe, and this is pretty much it.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you on. Really good hearing your story.